This is looking at the introduction of the character of Slim from the Steinbeck novella of Mice and Men from a language analysis perspective. So don't forget, first of all, whether you're familiar with the novella or not, you're going to make sure that you've read through the text carefully and that you know exactly what's going on, that you can picture it in your mind, and that you're really clear in terms of who's doing what, what's happening, what the order of events is. So that's the first step, to read through really carefully. Then the second step is to actively reread. And by that, I mean go through and make sure that you're kind of highlighting, annotating, or kind of generally flagging up what you think is important. Now, at this stage, it doesn't have to be as detailed as the method being used by the writer and the effect, but just to put yourself something there that says, hang on, my interest has been piqued by this, my attention's been caught by this section. I think there's something there that I'm going to come back to. And then finally, the last thing is that you are going to then annotate it. And your annotation is going to involve not just trying to find the subject terminology, the writer's method that's been used, but really, most importantly, the effect that that's having, and really exploring that out in detail. So take a moment to just read that text for yourself now. Okay, it might be that you're now going to move on to the active reading. So looking at it, say, a tall man stood in the doorway. We don't know who he is yet. Is it important that he's tall? What has that got? He held a crushed Stetson hat under his arm. Now, hopefully you've been able to work out what a Stetson hat is. It's kind of like a cowboy hat. But you know, it's crushed. And he combed his long, black, damp hair straight back. So you've got the idea he doesn't move in straight away. So I might want to flag up not immediate. Like the others, he wore blue jeans and a short denim jacket. Okay, so is he going to be the same as the others or not, maybe? What does his clothes, or what do his clothes, tell us about him? When he'd finished combing his hair, so he does that first, you know, there's kind of stages to this guy, he moved into the room, and he moved with a majesty only achieved by royalty and master craftsmen. So actually it's only when he's finished, then he moves, a majesty, royalty, master craftsman. He was a jerkline skinner, the prince of the ranch. Okay. So I've started to get a kind of pattern here. He was capable of driving 10, 16, even 20 mules with a single line to the leaders. Now, I'm not quite up on my cowboy skills or cowboy terminology, but that sounds like it's complicated and amazing. So what's that trying to say about him? He was capable of killing a fly on the wheeler's butt with a bullwhip without touching the mule. Make sure you kind of can work that backwards, you know, this idea. Imagine a fly on something and he can kill the fly with the whip without touching the animal. Is that precise? Okay. There was a gravity in his manner and a quiet so profound that all talk stopped when he spoke. His authority was so great that his word was taken on any subject, be it politics or love. This is all really certain and really wide. Like it's everybody about, and he talked about everything. This was Slim, the jerkline skinner. Okay, so he's introduced really factually. His hatchet face was ageless. Well, a hatchet, that's like a weapon. It's craggy, it's got all of that kind of thing. Ageless, really? What are they trying to say about him by saying he's ageless? He might have been 35 or 50. So there's a kind of nobody knows. And that's actually, that nobody knows is interesting because everything before has been so certain, hasn't it? So what does that say about it? His ear heard more than was said to him. Well, how can that happen? We're moving out of kind of literal territory at this point, aren't we, and into kind of metaphorical, symbolic territory. So he hears more than is said to him. His slow speech, speaking slowly, what does that say about him? Had overtones not of thought, but of understanding beyond thought. His hands large and lean, so powerful maybe, were delicate, were as delicate in their actions as those of a temple dancer. Okay, so I've got quite a lot to unpick there. And what I'm going to do is to go through that in an awful lot more detail and really try and look for patterns of ideas. I've already noticed maybe that I've got that pattern about royalty, that semantic field, that collection of words of royalty, and almost kind of religion at the end. Slim is a kind of almost godlike figure, it looks like. I've got something going on with power and control and precision. I've spotted on the way through maybe a simile or so. I've spotted a metaphor. There's a lot of words that I can explore the connotations of. Remember, that's connections and associations. You know, that all the kind of stuff that the writer wants to bring in but isn't actually explicitly saying. He's kind of hinting at in a word association game sort of way. So what can I do with that? What I'd recommend you do is, before you move on in this video, you undertake that exercise for yourself. You actually look at it and see exactly how far, exactly how much detail you can get before you move on. So now this is just looking at what I started to do with it. And I don't know whether or not you've got similar points or whether or not you've got different points. It doesn't mean, if I've put something, it doesn't mean that that's the only way of interpreting it. It doesn't mean that anything you've put is wrong. It just means that actually we're individuals with our own reactions to things, which is exactly how it should be. What I've tried to do is put as many ideas as possible in here, and then just going to whiz through them. So we've got a tall man stood in the doorway. I think I'm going to pick up on the tall as well, revisiting it a little bit, that actually he's physically imposing. So I will add in that little note again, I think, there. And if you're physically imposing, there's that idea of strength to start off with. He's not sort of small, he's tall, he's got poise, he's got stature about it. So, you know, there's something about the size of him. And he stands in the doorway, and as a result of that, he's framed, he's presented. There's that idea of him being silhouetted, the outline of him. And he's initially anonymous. There's an air of mystery about him. The idea that he's wearing a Stetson is symbolic of his role and position, but the idea that it's crushed, you know, it's work, practicality, maybe a lack of vanity, a kind of about him. And he stands and he combs his long black damp hair, so he's maybe not vain but well presented. It's a casual action. He's calm, he's controlled, he's not at all sort of nervous. The idea that his hair's long, you might relate to the fact he's a free spirit, he's independent. And when you say like the others, that's an interesting idea, because there comes to be a kind of contrast. The idea is that he is not like the others. He might be wearing the same clothes, but he's certainly really unusual, really rare in the characteristics that mark him out. His clothing is practical. So this is somebody who's got both practical and, we understand, sort of near godlike grace and elegance. It's only when he's finished doing what he's doing that he comes into the room, so he's got this idea of measure and control. And then you get the semantic field of royalty, the idea that he's majesty, royalty, prince. And it says that this, the way he moves, is only achieved by royalty or master craftsman. So the implication is, this is something exclusive or rare, and he must be either royalty or a master craftsman, or maybe a little bit of both. He's a prince of the ranch. We know he is a jerkline skinner. That's literal. We're being told that's his role, even though we may or may not know what a jerkline skinner does. But prince of the ranch is definitely metaphorical to explore the connotations of what that means for his authority, power, respect, almost like his birthright. He has a kind of innate authority. Now the word innate is interesting, so I'm going to put birthright there. So he was born to it. Like if you're a prince, you're born into that. And the word innate, if you think of both natural and antenatal and all that kind of words to do with birth, it means innate is kind of birth, and innate means inborn. So he has got this kind of inherent, that again means it's kind of in there at a massively fundamental level. It's kind of within. He's got this innate authority about him. Then we get an example of exactly what he can do, and he's capable of all of this. And it's moving from important and practical skills and the respect and admiration they garner, they create, to near deification, that idea that if he's a deity, he's nearly a god. It's, practical. He's got power, skill, control and accuracy. He's got authority. There's a quasi-religious, so a kind of semi-religious air about him. He has a huge influence on the men. And you get repeated a couple of times this word so. It's the repetition, the extreme. He's really taken as being the absolute kind of be all and end all on the ranch. And you can see that by his word was taken. There's a certainty about it. There was a gravity. His authority was so. This is not maybe. The men react to this instinctively and also unanimously. If something's unanimous, it means that everybody agrees, everybody does it. Let me just give you the word unanimous there. Unanimous. It means everybody agrees. Okay, so looking at it, and look at the range of subjects. It's politics or love. Then you get a very direct introduction for him. And then we move from the literal to the metaphorical. Look at the meaning of hatchet. Look at what it says, what it means when somebody has a hatchet face. It's kind of craggy and it's experienced, it's seen some life. But it's ageless. So metaphorically, he transcends, he overcomes, he kind of is not limited by the kind of usual stuff that holds humanity back. He transcends human limitations. And we get an air of mystery that contrasts with the previous decisive tone. He was. Now he might have been. We can't pin down his age. You start to get then the semantic field of religion. Okay, so we've moved from royalty, which is actually, it's worth commenting that this moves from I suppose secular authority and power, and I'll explain that. If something is secular, it means it's to do with mankind, it's to do with the world, okay? So we move from secular authority and power to actually kind of religious and godlike status. He kind of moves above being an ordinary man. He moves into the realm of being kind of godlike. So we move to the semantic field of religion. So we get these strange kind of claims that his ear heard more than was said to him. His slow speech had overtones not of thought but of understanding beyond thought. So this measure and control of his slow speech is now actually leading to this kind of mysterious ability to kind of judge or so. And in fact, if you know the novel at all, you'll know that at the end of the novel, if Slim is the kind of almost priest-like religious figure, it's Slim who grants forgiveness at the end of the novella. Okay, and then finally you have his hands large and lean, so another idea of physical power, but here in this simile they were as delicate in their action as those of a temple dancer, with all of the connotations of skill, beauty, grace, precision, elegance and religious purpose about them. Now you'll notice that as we've gone through this, we've actually come back to the same ideas a few times, and therefore before you start writing, I would start trying to group ideas. So you might want a paragraph on the idea of his physical power versus his I suppose his control. So physical power and his control. You might want something upon royalty. You might want something upon his idea of religion. You might want to talk about imagery in terms of looking at those ideas. You might want to talk about his appearance. So try and work out what your paragraphs are going to be, and then go and collect your information rather than just starting here and working down to here. You might want to sort of group how does Steinbeck present Slim? Good luck.